They called me coward before they called me hero. For 2 years, I wore that name like a uniform that never came off. Private First Class Marcus Chen, the soldier who froze, who failed, who let his brothers down when it mattered most. They didn't spit on me because military discipline prevented it, but I saw it in their eyes. Contempt, disappointment, the kind of judgment that cuts deeper than any enemy blade. This is the story of how the worst moment of my life prepared me for the most important mission I would ever face, and why sometimes the people everyone overlooks become the ones who matter most. It happened in Kunar Province, Afghanistan. My first real firefight after 6 months in country, spent pulling guard duty and filling sandbags. We were a supply convoy, 5 vehicles moving through a valley that intelligence swore was secure. Intelligence was wrong. The ambush came from 3 sides, RPGs and machine gun fire, turning our convoy into a kill box in under 30 seconds. I was in the 3rd vehicle, a gun turret operator, responsible for suppressing threats on our right flank. When the shooting started, my training should have kicked in. Muscle memory, repetition. All those hours on the range, but training happens in daylight with instructors watching, and you know nobody's actually dying. This was different. The noise wasn't like the movies. It was physical, concussive, overwhelming. The smell of burning metal and cordite, the screaming. My gunner Sergeant Davis, yelling orders I couldn't process, and the fear. Cold, paralyzing, absolute fear that turned my limbs to stone and my mind to static. I froze, hands on the weapon, but not firing, eyes open but not seeing, completely, utterly frozen while my unit fought for survival around me. The ambush lasted 4 minutes. We survived because Staff Sergeant Williams had the presence of mind to call in air support, and Lieutenant Hayes organized a fighting withdrawal that saved half the convoy. But 2 soldiers died in that valley. Private First Class Thompson took an RPG because I wasn't suppressing the position that fired it. Specialist Rodriguez bled out from gunshot wounds because our vehicle couldn't maneuver to safety while I sat paralyzed in the turret. The after-action review was clinical, factual, no emotion, just documentation. Private Chen failed to engage enemy forces despite multiple direct orders. Private Chen's failure to provide covering fire directly contributed to 2 Kia and 4 WIA. Private Chen demonstrated inability to perform under combat stress, recommended for psychological evaluation and removal from combat operations. They didn't call me coward in the report. They didn't have to. Everyone knew. I was reassigned to FOB Salerno, a forward operating base that handled logistics and supply coordination. No combat, no responsibility beyond counting boxes and managing inventory spreadsheets. It was punishment, disguised as administrative necessity. The other soldiers didn't talk to me, unless required. I ate alone, slept in a corner of the barracks, where nobody had to acknowledge my existence. At night, I replayed that ambush, trying to understand why my body betrayed me, why I couldn't be what I was supposed to be. A warrior, a Marine, someone worth the uniform. 6 months into my exile, a new unit arrived at Salerno. Special Forces, though they never advertised it. They kept to themselves, operated on different schedules, disappeared for days, and returned without explaining where they'd been. Their commander was Captain Sarah Reeves, A woman who'd earned her position through a decade of operations that most soldiers never even heard about. She had a reputation for finding value in unexpected places, for building teams from spare parts that conventional wisdom would discard. She found me in the supply warehouse on a Tuesday afternoon, inventory clipboard in hand, doing the mindless work that filled my days. "Private Chen," she said, no preamble, no small talk. "I've read your file, the ambush in Kuna, the freeze." I stiffened, waiting for whatever new humiliation was coming. "Yes, ma'am. Tell me what happened, not the report. What you experienced." Nobody had asked me that. Not the investigators, not the psychologists, not anyone. They documented the failure, but never explored the why. I told her, the sensory overload, the disconnect between training and reality, the way my mind understood what needed to happen, but my body refused to comply, the shame that came after, worse than the fear that came during. Reeves listened without interrupting. When I finished, she nodded slowly. "You know what I think? I think you're not a coward. I think you're someone whose brain works differently. Under stress, your system got overwhelmed because you were processing too much information too fast. You weren't scared. You were overstimulated. There's a difference. Ma'am, with respect, the result was the same. People died because I couldn't function. True, but that doesn't make you worthless. It makes you someone who needs a different kind of mission. One where your particular way of processing information becomes an asset instead of a liability." She handed me a piece of paper with a time and location. "Be there tomorrow at 0600. Bring your gear. I'm offering you a chance to be useful again. Take it or don't, your choice." I almost didn't go. Spent the night convinced it was some elaborate humiliation, a final confirmation of my worthlessness. But something in Reeves' eyes had been genuine. Not pity, not contempt, just assessment, like she saw something worth salvaging. So I went. The briefing room held 12 people, Reeves' Special Forces team, all operators with faces that had seen things they'd never discuss. And me, the broken supply clerk who didn't belong. Reeves started without ceremony. "We have a situation. 3 days ago, a CIA asset named Karim Ahmadi went dark in Helmand province. Ahmadi has been providing intelligence on Taliban leadership for 18 months. High value, verified information that's prevented multiple attacks and compromised several enemy networks. His handler's last communication indicated Ahmadi discovered something significant, something that made him a target. We believe he's hiding in a village called Dashti Kala, 60 clicks inside hostile territory." She pulled up a map. The village was isolated, surrounded by mountains, accessible only through narrow passes that any defender could easily monitor. Standard extraction is impossible. They'll see us coming from 10 clicks out. Helicopters can't get close without alerting every hostile in the province. We need someone to walk in, make contact with Ahmadi, and walk out without raising suspicion. Someone who doesn't look like a threat. Someone who can blend in. One of the operators, a sergeant named Mason, shook his head. "Ma'am, with respect, nobody on this team can blend in a Pashtun village. We're too big, too obvious, too military. We'd be made in 30 seconds. You're right, which is why I'm not sending you." Reeves looked at me. "Chen speaks Dari and Pashto. Learned it from his grandmother, who immigrated from Afghanistan in the 80s. He's small, unassuming, looks young enough to pass for a displaced teenager, and most importantly, he thinks differently than conventional operators. Where you see threats and calculate response times, he sees patterns and processes information in layers. That's exactly what this mission needs. The room went silent. Mason spoke carefully. Ma'am, you're proposing we send a supply clerk who froze in combat into hostile territory alone to extract a high-value asset? That's suicide. For him and for Ahmadi. I'm proposing we send someone the enemy won't recognize as a threat until it's too late. Chen, you'll go in disguised as a refugee displaced by fighting near Kandahar. Your story is you're looking for family in Dashti Kala. You'll have no weapons, no communications equipment, nothing that identifies you as American military. Just a cover story and instructions on how to contact Ahmadi. Once you're inside the village, my mouth was dry, and extraction. You walk out the same way you walked in. Once you make contact, Ahmadi will guide you to a location where we can provide support. But inside the village, you're alone. One mistake, one moment where they suspect what you are, and you're both dead. It was insane. It was suicide. And it was the first time since Kuna that anyone had looked at me like I might be capable of something important. I'll do it. The preparation took 3 days. They stripped away everything that marked me as American military. My uniform, my bearing, my haircut. They dressed me in clothes taken from refugee camps, worn and dirty and anonymous. They taught me the dialect specific to the region one was supposed to be from, corrected my pronunciation, drilled me on cultural details that would make the difference between acceptance and exposure. Reeves personally oversaw the training, pushing me through scenarios, testing my reactions, forcing me to think like someone whose only goal was survival, not combat. The fear you felt in Kuna, she said during one session, that's your asset now. Real refugees are scared, they're overwhelmed. They process the world as threats and safe spaces. Your brain already works that way. Use it. Let them see someone who's afraid, who's desperate, who's no threat to anyone. That's your weapon. On the 4th day, they inserted me 20 clicks from Dashti Kala. No ceremony, no speeches, just a quiet drop in darkness, and then I was alone. Walking through mountains under stars that didn't care whether I succeeded or died trying. The walk took 2 days. I passed through territory where every shadow could hide enemy fighters, where every sound might be the last warning I'd get. But I wasn't a soldier in that landscape. I was a refugee, displaced and desperate, and that made me invisible in ways a warrior could never be. I reached Dashti Kala at dusk. The village was small, maybe 40 families, clustered around a well and a mosque. Children played in dusty streets. Old men sat drinking tea and discussing things I couldn't hear. I approached slowly, hands visible, posture submissive. A young man with an AK-47 stopped me at the village edge. I gave him my story in halting Pashto, careful to seem nervous, uncertain, looking for my uncle's family, displaced from fighting near Kandahar, just passing through, hoping for information, maybe a meal before moving on. He studied me with eyes that had seen too much violence, but he saw what I needed him to see. A scared kid, no threat. He gestured toward the village center. Ask at the mosque. The imam knows everyone. The imam was an old man with a white beard and gentle eyes that missed nothing. I repeated my story. He listened, nodding occasionally, asking questions that tested the details. Where in Kandahar? Which neighborhood? What did my uncle's compound look like? I answered carefully, using the information Reeves' team had prepared, keeping my story consistent but imperfect, the way real memory works. Finally, he nodded. There is a man here from Kandahar, Kareem. He came 2 months ago, also displaced. Perhaps he knows your family. He stays in the house at the north edge, the one with the blue door. I found the house as darkness fell, knocked quietly. The man who answered was small, middle-aged, with intelligent eyes that widened slightly when he saw me. I spoke the code phrase Reeves had given me, a sentence in Dari that meant nothing to anyone except Ahmadi. The pomegranates in my grandmother's garden grew sweet even in winter. He stared at me for 5 seconds that felt like hours. Then he pulled me inside, closed the door, checked the windows. They sent a child. You're barely old enough to shave. I'm 23, and I'm what they could send without alerting everyone in the valley. Then they're either very clever or very desperate. He moved to a back room, returned with a small package wrapped in cloth. This is what I found: names, accounts, proof that someone in your government is funding Taliban operations, not to defeat them, to sustain them. Someone wants this war to continue indefinitely. The weight of it settled over me. This wasn't just an extraction. This was evidence that could change everything. Who knows you have this? Too many people. I was careless, made inquiries that attracted attention. There are Taliban here, in the village. 2 men, pretending to be refugees like us. They're watching, waiting. Once they confirm I have the evidence, they'll kill me and take it. Maybe tonight, maybe tomorrow, but soon. Then we leave now. Where? Every path out of this village is watched. The moment we try to run, they'll know. They'll follow. We won't make it 5 kilometers. Ahmadi's hands shook slightly. I'm sorry. They sent you to die with me. I'm sorry. My mind raced. That same overwhelming sensation from Kuna. Too much information, too many threats, too many variables. But this time I didn't freeze. This time I let it flow through me, processing, analyzing, finding patterns. The Taliban fighters, where are they staying? The compound on the east side, near the goat pens, and the village. Are people loyal to them? Afraid of them? Indifferent? Ahmadi considered. Afraid mostly. They've killed people who resisted, but they pay well. Protection money. So the village tolerates them. An idea formed. Reckless. Probably insane. But the only option I could see. Can you start a fire? Something big enough to create chaos, but not big enough to burn the whole village. Why would I? Understanding dawned in his eyes. You want to create a distraction. I want to create panic, confusion. A moment when everyone is focused on the fire, and not on 2 refugees slipping away in the darkness. But we need the Taliban fighters to respond to the fire, which means it has to threaten something they care about, their compound. If a fire started near the goat pens, the wind would carry it toward their building. They'd have to fight it or lose everything they've stored there. Ahmadi smiled grimly. You're either brilliant or suicidal, probably both. Can you do it? Give me 30 minutes. I spent those 30 minutes preparing our escape route, identifying the path that would take us north toward the extraction point, memorizing landmarks I could navigate by in darkness. When the fire started, it was beautiful and terrible. Flames catching on dry hay near the goat pens, spreading quickly toward the Taliban compound. Shouts erupted, people running. The Taliban fighters emerged, yelling orders, organizing bucket chains, trying to save their supplies. In the chaos, 2 refugees slipped out of a house with a blue door and disappeared into the night. Nobody noticed, nobody cared. The fire mattered more than 2 shadows moving through darkness. We ran for 6 hours, pushing through exhaustion and fear and terrain that wanted to kill us. Behind us, I heard pursuit starting around midnight. They discovered we were gone. Now they were hunting us. Ahmadi was struggling, a middle-aged man unused to this kind of physical stress. I carried the evidence package, pulled him along when he faltered, urged him forward when he wanted to rest. We couldn't stop. Stopping meant dying. At dawn, we reached the extraction point, a valley where Reeves had promised support if we made it this far. But the valley was empty. No helicopters, no rescue force, just us and the sound of pursuit getting closer. Ahmadi collapsed against a rock. They're not coming. They're coming. We're early. We're ahead of schedule. They'll be here. But I wasn't sure of anything except that we'd come too far to quit now. The Taliban fighters emerged from the tree line. 20 minutes later, 4 of them, weapons ready, spreading out to surround us. Their leader called out in Pashto, ordering us to surrender the evidence, promising quick deaths if we complied. I stood up, hands raised, positioning myself between them and Ahmadi. We're just refugees, I called back. We don't have what you're looking for. You're American, the leader said, switching to accented English. I can see it in your eyes. Americans always think they're heroes, think they can save everyone, but all you do is die badly. He raised his weapon. I closed my eyes, not in fear but in acceptance. I'd done what I came to do. Gotten Ahmadi this far. Proved I wasn't the coward everyone thought I was. If this was the end, at least it meant something. The sound that came wasn't gunfire. It was rotor blades. 2 Apache helicopters cresting the ridge, coming in fast and low. The Taliban fighters scattered, diving for cover. But there was nowhere to hide. Reeves' voice crackled over a loudspeaker. Chen, Ahmadi, get down. We flattened as the Apaches engaged. 30mm cannons turning the valley into thunder. It lasted 30 seconds. When silence returned, the Taliban fighters were gone. Dead or fled, didn't matter. We were alive. The helicopters landed. Reeves jumped out, running toward us. You're late, she said, but she was smiling. Had me worried. Traffic was bad. I managed. My legs gave out. The adrenaline that had sustained me for 8 hours evaporated all at once. Reeves caught me. Easy, Chen. You did it. Mission complete. The debrief took 3 days. They verified the evidence Ahmadi carried. Names were named. Investigations launched. People in high places started sweating. And somewhere in the classified reports, my name appeared not as a failure, but as the operator who'd completed an impossible extraction against overwhelming odds. The supply clerk who'd walked into enemy territory alone and walked out with the asset. Word spread the way word always spreads in military communities. The coward from Kuna had redeemed himself. Suddenly, people who'd avoided me wanted to hear the story. Soldiers who'd looked through me started seeing me. It was uncomfortable. I didn't want to be a hero. I just wanted to not be a coward anymore. Reeves understood. You were never a coward, she told me after the commendation ceremony they held in a locked room, where only people with clearances could attend. You were someone in the wrong role. Some people are warriors. They thrive in combat. You're not that. You're an infiltrator, a thinker, Someone who wins by not fighting. The military needs both kinds. We just couldn't see what kind you were until you showed us. I stayed with Reeves' unit for the next 2 years, ran 6 more operations, each one requiring someone who could blend in, think differently, survive through intelligence rather than firepower. I was good at it, better than good, but I never forgot Kuna. Never forgot the 2 soldiers who died while I froze. Their names are tattooed on my forearm now. Thompson and Rodriguez. A reminder that redemption doesn't erase failure. It just gives you a chance to balance the scales. I left the military last year, not in disgrace this time, but with a chest full of medals they can never publicly acknowledge, and a record that will stay classified until long after I'm dead. I work now with refugees, helping people who've been displaced by wars they didn't start, using the skills Reeves taught me to navigate systems and find resources for people everyone else overlooks. Because I know what it feels like to be looked down on, to be dismissed as worthless, to carry shame that feels heavier than any burden should be. Here's what I learned in those mountains of Afghanistan. Heroism isn't about never feeling fear. It's about functioning despite fear. And sometimes the people everyone writes off become the ones who matter most, because they've learned to find value in unexpected places, to see paths that conventional thinking misses. The coward everyone avoided became the operator they couldn't do without, not because I became brave, but because I learned there are different kinds of strength, and the kind I have matters just as much as the kind I lack. If this story resonates with you, if you've ever felt like the person everyone overlooks or underestimates, leave a comment below, tell me your story, and subscribe to hear more about warriors who didn't fit the mold, who found their path despite the judgment, who proved that there's no single way to serve with honor. Because the military teaches one definition of strength, but the real world needs all kinds, and sometimes the weakest link becomes the strongest connection.